Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri, and today we're going to talk about inflation and potentially stagflation coming to the United States. Though this is probably a less likely occurrence, it is starting to become a real threat to the global economy. So yes, this impacts you around the world. This is also concerning, extremely concerning for those in the United States. I've seen channels, and I'll link some other footage and things below so you can kind of see what I'm talking about from other perspectives. But people are starting to realize there's this thing called inflation that's happening because we've had so many poor economic decisions in the last, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year, maybe a little bit more so. So I am strongly against the stimulus that went out, all the stimulus checks. So again, this is not a Republican or Democratic, perspective on this. I was against it when, the Republicans and the Democrats combined together wanted stimulus and, bail out businesses and all this stuff. And it's okay because it's small business and small America. I was against the bank bailouts in 2007, 2008. And yet again, we just keep bailing people out because people don't save for a rainy day here. And this is kind of one of the crux of the problem here is you incentivize people not to save. And it turns out now with inflation, saving money might not be the best idea on top of this. So now we're kind of making the problem even worse here. So let's just dive on into here to what I'm talking about. So 4 months ago, I mentioned the money supply is through the roof, and I provided this chart. Okay, so this chart shows you the money supply that we have in the United States. And essentially, I made just a basic comment, when money supply goes up, essentially all the prices of everything have to go up with it. There were even comments which were deleted about how, consumer pricing index, which is a terrible index to actually index inflation off of, but it's the best we have, how CPI essentially doesn't necessarily model what's going on, and people are complaining and saying, oh, there's no such thing as correlation between inflation and the number of dollars, and yet I went and found all these charts and evidence and showed people, hey, look, this is how it works. This is economics 101 here. So let's think about here what's happening with stimulus checks, unemployment benefits, spending through the roof politically from, again, both parties, but especially now with our current president, we start to see a lot of spending occurring and a lot of nonsense and reshuffling and trying to essentially restack the system to transfer, wealth from the rich to the poor. And somehow this is going to solve all of our problems. And yet you're going to see here we're having a lot of other issues. So one of the big problems here is looking at supply of dollars. So simply put, right, there is a trade-off or an exchange between two individuals in a free capitalist market based off the benefit of both parties, right? So somebody comes to the table and says, I'll mow your yard for you and I'll do it for $50. And if the other person agrees and thinks, wow, $50 is a pretty good deal, I don't want to mow it myself, they'll pay the $50 here. But one of the most confusing aspects and points here with inflation and dollars is people start to think that the US dollar has value, like it's intrinsically worth something. It's not worth anything. It's literally paper. It's fiat. It says, I trust and believe in the United States government. That's literally all it says. It says nothing more than that. There's no value to it. And so I think it's more useful to look at this from a trading perspective, so going back to like old times before there was currencies and dollars and yens and, all kinds, pesos and all these other currencies out there. When you look at it, right, two individuals have to agree to trade something specifically. So in the example of, someone's trading, mowing your lawn, which is a service for the $50 here. Let's look at this as two trades here. Let's say the other person is an apple farmer, right? And they say, I'll give you, 1 apple if you will mow my yard for me. It doesn't sound like a very good deal here, right? Like 1 apple for me to mow your yard, right? So now you can think about this in dollar terms if you really wanted to and say, okay, right, like an apple's not worth $50, but mowing my yard probably is worth $50 because maybe I live on an acre, right? So you start thinking about it, like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. But realistically, when people transact, they're transacting on goods that actually have intrinsic value here, right? Like that apple is going to provide me nourishment. Like I need the apple if I want to, have an apple or have, survive and eat food here. On the same time, I need my grass mowed because it gets really tall, then, bugs and weeds come in and it's unsafe. And I don't know, there's all kinds of other concerns. The neighbors don't like you anymore because your yard looks terrible. So you need to get it mowed, but it takes up time and effort and you have to have a mower and gasoline to run the mower or maybe, a giant battery with electricity to put in there. So you have to find what is the trade-off between apples from the apple farmer and the guy that's willing to mow the yard, that has the lawnmower and the gasoline. And so they're going to get to a point where it's like, okay, I'll trade you, I don't know, maybe 10 pounds of apples or 20 pounds of apples. Let's just say 10 pounds for easiness here. 10 pounds of apples to mow your yard. The guy says, awesome, I need some apples. This is a great deal. And they transact, right? Now, dollars don't play into this. So this is what I'm trying to explain to people in general, is that a dollar is not worth anything. It's just a benchmarking price, right? And I can just as easily say, okay, how many pounds, so British pounds, can I transact this at? And it's going to be different than the dollar value here. So the dollar value itself is not backed by anything. Now, the US dollar used to be backed by gold, so it had somewhat of an intrinsic value in the sense that the government said, we promise to hold X amount of gold per US dollars. Gold has an actual value. Is it a tangible good? You can manufacture with it. You can make jewelry with it. People throughout history think it's worth a lot of money based on the difficulty of actually finding gold and mining gold. And that limited supply of gold and the difficulty and the cost to mining more gold is what adds value to it. So back to this apple and lawn mowing example here, right? One of the things we see now with a lot of politicians and things that are kind of going on is people are saying, okay, we're going to, make unemployment super high. We're going to help people find new jobs. And surprise, surprise, if you can make a decent amount of money not working, people just are choosing not to work. And so what we end up seeing a lot of times is a lot of those jobs that don't pay as well, or they're just really challenging and difficult jobs, it's just easier not to do anything, right? And even people on higher end jobs that pay a ton of money, if I paid you a similar amount or slightly less, you're probably going to choose not to work. And so now we're having a shortage here. So I'll give you some example here. I'm building this, YouTube studio here. There is a shortage on construction labor. Wood prices are through the roof, right? These are all kind of pointing to we have issues here with our economy. And it seems like there's going to be some inflation that are kind of driving into this. Stock prices at an all-time high. They're not worth any more than they were. We're just seeing a lot of inflation that's driving all these prices up. And you start looking across the board, right? Procter & Gamble came out, I believe Kimberly-Clark, I think Coca-Cola, for example, have all mentioned the cost of all these goods are going up, okay? So tying all these pieces together, I know I'm a little scattered here, right? You don't change the intrinsic value of trade between two individuals, right? So when you have apples versus your lawn mowing, it doesn't matter what you designated in dollars or in pounds or pesos on top of it, right? You can inflate the dollars and print out 10 times as many dollars as you want. The price of mowing your yard is going to change significantly, but also the price of those apples is going to change significantly. So everything is moving together because there's too much of a nonsensical paper currency here. And what people fail to realize is how you make money and value here is through providing some sort of value to somebody else that's willing to trade you for that. Now, of course, you need some sort of currency, or you need, I would argue not a fiat or purely fiat currency here, but you need some sort of currency to trade because, maybe that guy that mows your yard and he gets 10 pounds of apples, after he mows it once a month, twice, like he's coming back every month here, he doesn't need, 10 pounds of apples every month. That's way too much for his family. So it makes more sense to have some sort of currency, but I hope you have the takeaway value here that you're exchanging an actual relative value of goods between everybody in society based on the value that you give and the value that you provide. So now, getting into this a little more here, you can't just jack minimum wage up and think that's going to be a living wage for everybody because those individuals are not providing any more value than they were before. So as we're seeing, so I'm kind of indicating here too, some of this inflation is driven also by not just the money supply, but also by the fact that so many states and so many social justice warriors in general are pushing for higher minimum wage. Higher minimum wage isn't really good for anybody. It actually hurts the poor, which I'm not going to go into in this video here. But it's going to be driving, again, that transaction rate of every good, everybody, every service up, right? Because what happens is now you say, okay, that 10 pounds of apples, instead of mowing your yard, the government's forcing me now to mow your yard 4 times for that same 10 pounds of apples. It's just not worth it. I'm not going to do it. I'll just do it myself, which is what's happening. Or more realistically, you say, there's a neighborhood kid, just down the street who's 15 years old who wants a job. I'll just pay him under the table, that original rate of essentially, 10 pounds of apples here. So minimum wage is driving this. The fact that we have printed massive amounts of money is driving this. The spending that we're seeing now on top of this from the government is ridiculous and insane. So I'm not going to go too much into the rant, but essentially politicians on both sides of the party are trying to come up with how do I buy voters? How do I segregate voters into these groups where I can say, this type of voter votes with me, and I am going to give you a kickback by doing X, Y, and Z, right? Whether it's providing you jobs or giving you handouts or giving you tax breaks. Again, it's all nonsense, but all this excessive spending we see from the government as well, it's money that doesn't exist. Okay, no one's creating enough value, so government can be considered like a purchaser. They don't have enough value. They don't create enough value, and they are going to excessively tax the wealthy and even the middle class. So don't pretend like they're not going to tax the middle class. It's coming to, and you're going to get taxed. They can't support all these initiatives that the government's providing. Okay, and providing free things like crazy high unemployment rates. They think, oh, Dimitri, it's just a patch. It's just helping, these lower class people through. Well, I don't know about you, but a lot of people I've talked to that I know that are friends that work on these so-called lower class jobs, as you're going to put them, like construction, they're slammed. They have so much work to do, but there's not enough people to do it. And so now people are falling behind on projects. They just can't get enough projects done, but they're actually doing pretty well because there's a ton of jobs available for them. So you're creating essentially job shortages now because you're incentivizing people not to work, which is what's driving a lot of this, issue now as well. So now we're seeing shortages in supplies on top of all of this, inflationary pressure because people aren't working. And when people don't work, they can't manufacture things. And when they can't manufacture things, there's nothing for you to actually buy. So again, this whole thing of, rich versus poor that's being driven by the far left right now is just complete nonsense. This is kind of like some of the ripple effect of showing you like this doesn't work, right? Everybody needs everybody in the economy, right? The rich need the poor need the rich. All these different industries and jobs and things, they all need each other to do different things. And when you take out part of it or you incentivize part of them to work, or even just equally across the board, you're now going to have shortages of actual services and goods here. And now this creates panic and havoc and a bunch of other issues. And then to wrap this video up here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the other point which I mentioned, which I made a video on gold and silver. People have indicated, Dimitri, the gold and silver prices are not going as high or as correlated with the inflation. This is supposed to be a hedge against inflation, therefore we don't have inflation. Well, you're kind of ignoring another piece here. So yes, I do buy gold and silver as an alternative investment. I also hold Bitcoin and Ethereum and a Litecoin and a few other different, alternative investments and cryptocurrencies. This is where people are running, right? A lot of dollars going in. As you look at, cryptocurrencies, they're through the roof. I think when I bought, Bitcoin was trading for $4,000 per Bitcoin. And last time I looked, it was like $63,000 per Bitcoin, right? That's crazy, right? You think, oh, it's because it has all this value. Well, in a way it does. If the government fails and people no longer trust the United States, the US government here, they have to put their assets into some sort of other alternative investment. And I'm not suggesting you sell all your dollars and you go into cryptocurrencies here, right? How bad the inflation is going to get, it's kind of hard to judge. There are different ways to kind of hedge this. One is buying international assets, so things that are designated in other currencies, so other countries are fine. The problem, though, is the US is the dominant economy globally. Again, China's right up there with us. But when one of us kind of falters, the whole kind of global economic environment shifts and changes. And if we see a lot of inflation from the United States, we're going to have a ton of problems globally. Again, trying to diversify, look at a variety of things if you're trying to kind of hedge against it. Don't do anything too crazy. So I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't actually financial advice. I'm just kind of showing you alternatives that people are considering. So Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is one of them. I'm very hesitant of many cryptocurrencies because they don't have any actual intrinsic value behind them. So as we mentioned, again, it's come out like a fiat currency. So do you trust the whole group versus the US government? I don't know. There's pros and cons there. There are other things you can do, like invest in yourself, which is a great investment. Invest in your education, right? Build skills, these sorts of things. But there's going to be a lot of interesting things happening in the economy coming forward. So I see somewhat of an economic crisis coming. The Federal Reserve is a joke, as usual, as I've mentioned here. I guess the Economic Council and everything here, they are not well prepared. I cannot imagine what they're going to attempt to do here to control and manipulate the economy, which again, I'm not a big fan of. But we're in a bad situation. How do you escape it being a U.S. citizen? I don't think there's a lot of good alternatives out there, to be honest with you. You can get international assets, as I mentioned. You can get alternative investments, so like art, for example, and high-end wines and things like that. But then can you really convert that back into something later in value? So one of the reasons you would do this, alternative investments, so just as an idea here for some of you, If you have something, let's say, I don't know, I've got this Rockstar drink can here. Let's say it sells for $2 today. You have inflation and it goes up to $4 in a month. It goes up to $6 in 2 months. It goes up to $8, after that. The issue is that if you save money and you go to buy this, if you would have bought it today for $2 and held it, if somebody else wants it, you could either sell it for $8 in the future, or you could save yourself that $6 difference here by just drinking it in the future if you stocked up today. So I see a bunch of hoarding coming as well in different types of markets here. Construction goods, for example, are through the roof. As I mentioned, Procter & Gamble, Kimberly-Clark, Coca-Cola, a lot of these corporations are already saying the cost of manufacturing everything has gone up. Prices are going to go up across the board for all goods. So just kind of a little prediction, a little bit of warning here, a little bit of ranting. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, until next time.